Hi, and welcome to the OT is In, the podcast where we merge the worlds of education and occupational therapy to empower families like yours. I'm Sarah Collins, your host, an occupational therapist and a homeschooling parent. I've experienced occupational therapy by supporting families for over 15 years, but also through seeking out support of my own children. So I'm right here in the trenches with you. Though there is not one way to educate your child, there is a lot to consider when individualizing an education. And the goal of this podcast is to explain some of the why behind what an occupational therapist is thinking so you can apply it to your own family. Especially with my three favorite topics: executive functioning, handwriting, and sensory processing. Each episode will be packed with practical tips, expert interviews, and real-life stories aimed at helping you to create a supportive learning environment for your child. So, grab your headphones and get ready to dive in of the collision of education and occupational therapy. I'm Sarah Collins from Homeschool OT, and I'm thrilled to have you with me on this journey of discovery. Welcome back to the OT is In podcast. I'm your host, Sarah Collins, and today I'm here with Marnie Love, a seasoned homeschooling mom, certified parenting coach, and advocate for executive functioning skills. Marnie, who's been navigating the homeschool landscape for over 2 decades, shares her wealth of experience and insights, particularly within the Connected Families framework. Join us as we discuss essential topics like co-regulation and executive functioning and explore how these concepts play out in everyday parenting, especially during this bustling holiday season. Learn about how our everyday activities can help to build these executive functioning skills, but also, on the flip side, practical strategies to accommodate if you know executive functioning skills are a struggle for you or your children. And if you've never heard of executive functioning before, don't worry, we're going to define these skills for you here too. Stick around then as we discuss the importance of self-reflection for parents and how to create a balanced holiday schedule that honors your family's unique needs, ensuring both safety and joy amidst this festive chaos. So be sure to check the show notes for resources and to visit marnielove.com for more from our amazing guest. Happy holidays from me and from Marnie. We hope you enjoy the insightful conversation. Now, on with the show. Happy holidays from the OT is In podcast. This holiday season, we want to send warm wishes to all of our listeners. So whether you're cozying up with hot cocoa or wrapping up another busy homeschool day, we're grateful to be here and be a part of your journey. I also want to remind you of all the natural learning that occurs each and every day for your children. I recognize this time of year, many are busy with activities that vary from your typical rhythm and routine. And I also recognize this variance can be stressful for your children and for some of you that worry and stress about doing enough for your child's academics. So the reverse planning guide from homeschoolot.com is the perfect tool for those of you that need a reminder that you are doing enough. Most likely, more than enough. This guide is designed to help you recognize the motor skills, the social skills, the cognitive skills, and their tie to academics that you are already naturally doing. There's a worksheet that allows you to jot notes, while a video teaches you to break down and analyze the activities, simplifying your homeschooling journey. So, though it can be useful all year round, it's especially useful right now during the holiday season. So don't just plan, celebrate the learning that's happening already every day. Thank you guys for being a part of our community, and here we are wishing you a joyful holiday season and a bright start to the new year. Hey, and welcome back to the OT is In. I'm Sarah Collins, and today I have with me a good friend of mine, Marnie Love. Marnie and I go way back to the beginning of Homeschool OT, which is 5 years ago now, pretty crazy. But Marnie, I want you to actually introduce yourself to our listeners here, your expertise, your homeschooling, all of it. Just go for it.
Okay. Yeah. So I'm Marnie. I have 3 boys. We live in Northern California, and we have been homeschooling since the beginning. I was a credential teacher before in public school and became a homeschool mom when my oldest, who's now 20, was born. And yeah, we've been homeschooling all the way through. My middle son is now a senior, so I'm working myself right out of a job.
Yes.
He's now a freshman. And so we are, yeah, just working. And we play sports. My boys play football. We've got my oldest likes to play drums. He's a musician. So full life with three boys. And we met as I was just needing some help with some executive function and primitive reflex stuff. And yeah, still learning. We've got ADHD. We've got lots of stuff going on in our family. And so I've been learning about that. I'm also a parenting coach. I really love working with homeschool families in particular. I'm certified through Connected Families. I also work for Connected Families as a parent coach trainer. I love doing that. I really love helping parents, especially parents that are homeschooling kids that are neurodivergent or have some of these kind of executive function delays, because I really have struggled with that. Yes.
So, what has been the best part of homeschooling your boys?
Oh my goodness. I've just been so grateful after being in public school and seeing just the way that the classroom is set up. It wasn't really going to work for my boys who need to move their bodies. They need to move, they need to learn at their pace. I've got some kids that are a little bit ahead in some areas, need a little bit more time in other areas. And so that was what I was really excited about with homeschooling, was be able to match them right where they were at, move at the pace that they needed to go, let them excel where they were ready and get more practice. And then just brain breaks, right? Being able to move your body and not have to sit in a classroom. And plus, also with the ADHD, the amount of distraction that happens in a classroom, I felt like I was just grateful to be able to provide the space that they needed in order to have success.
I love this so much. And since you're talking some about learning at their own pace and really thinking about using our day-to-day life as pieces of education, I think that's one of the biggest benefits of homeschooling is not, yes, we have to do this at a certain time, and then we have to go to math, and then we have to go to whatever language arts. Sure, we can have a rhythm and a routine, but we also have some space for the brain breaks, like you were talking about, which can be very well be it's time for day to day. And since it's holiday season, let's break that down a little bit as far as what are some holiday activities that have been key for your family? And then let's dive into how that helps with executive functioning.
Yeah, yeah. So we really I've learned that I need to actually be careful with how much we put on our plate. That's the first thing. During the holidays, I think in the early years, I overloaded everybody because there's so many fun and exciting things to do. And so I learned that we need to pare down a little bit. So I think that's the first thing, of just picking the most important things. Yeah.
Is an executive functioning skill in itself. That's prioritization and planning and organizing. And that falls a lot of the times on us as parents at the beginning of, we look at this whole activity or how you occupy your time, right? Occupation, a whole getting ready for the holidays as one occupation, that priority is a key in that. But so what was one of the things that you prioritized?
Yeah, at Connected Families, we love to talk about family meetings. And so we sat down and talked about what were some favorite things that we really wanted to make sure, like our big rocks that we put in first, so that I could plan around the things that the boys really loved. And surprisingly, some of the things that I really loved and thought that they would, they didn't pick. And so I knew I could let some of those go.
Yeah, like what did you love that you had to let go?
I think maybe it's because I have boys, I don't know, but the Nutcracker was something that I thought would be really fun. And we did it once when every boy was 5. We went and saw a professional, and they said that was enough. They didn't need to do it again. So, yeah. And then there's another production here that's like a singing Christmas tree event. And they said, yeah, we really don't need to do like those kinds of events. We don't need to take up time with those things. And so, like, the main things for them, they love looking at Christmas lights. And so, like, our Christmas light tours were a big deal. And so, just planning that, like, what neighborhoods do we really want to hit? And when can we do that? It's trickier now that we've got kids working and all the
Same
practices and all those things. But so that was a major one. And then, of course, Christmas movies was another major one. And that has to get planned out because, especially now, like with everybody going different directions, when can we do those? And which ones are most important if we were going to prioritize, right?
I get the elf in my house.
I've got one that doesn't. So that's the other thing, like compromise. We all have different things we like, and it's okay.
Yeah, yeah. All right, so
Yeah.
let's break down this Christmas lights thing a little bit more. So, when I talk through executive functioning skills, I typically go through because there's several models out there, but I typically use Smart But Scattered simply because it is the most accessible out there. I know, Marnie, that you've read through that at different points in time, once with me at least, I know, and then I think a few other times. But so this one is by Peg Dawson and Richard Guar, and there are several, I'll make sure it's linked, but they have a few out there. They have Smart But Scattered Teen. I know they have the plain Smart But Scattered, but they list this executive functioning skills in the same manner. So we're going to go through them together just in terms of planning out your Christmas lights extravaganza. So the first part is this planning and organizing, right? So sometimes that is looking at the calendar, just like you mentioned within your family meeting, which I love that you do. But also would be planning the route to go. So do you guys sit down together to do that?
We talk about the neighborhoods that we want. I've got one kid that really likes maps. And so he's going to be the one that kind of leads that charge of which way we should go. And there's one area that is super crowded for us. And so we've learned how to do that in a way that we're not just stuck sitting and
Mm,
when the best time to do that earlier rather than closer to Christmas kind of.
yeah, yeah.
And yeah, we talk about that.
So that is planning again, like with your calendar, but then also that day to day of your exact route. And even things like making sure you have everything you need, like gas in the car or your snacks if you're going to be driving around or
Hot chocolate.
your hot chocolate as you're going. So that can fall on you, but I love the way that you mentioned I've got one child who loves maps. So you've, relegated that part to him. Is there like one of your boys that's, hey, this is everything that we need that helps to prepare for that, or do you let that fall on you?
No, I love, so my oldest is really, he loves like fun. He loves to make things fun and special and tradition. And
Yeah.
so he always reminds me, I will admit, like I've got some executive function shortcomings myself.
Mhm.
And so
Love
he's
to have
really
to.
good at helping me to remember the candy cane for the hot chocolate. Oh, we have to have peppermint hot chocolate. And
Yeah.
like he remembers those little things. And he's really good. He likes to make like the playlist for our trip and that kind of stuff. So he's really good at like adding in the fun elements.
That
I really kind of rely on him for that.
that is so beautiful because you're looking at what his strengths are and also saying, okay, so maybe I can lend you my brain a little bit, but you're also talking about he's lending you his.
Yes.
And that's what makes it fun. I also love when our kids they remember traditions or something and it's, oh,
Yeah.
I didn't know that we did that.
Yes.
Like that did not
Exactly.
stick in my mind, but he's no, we have to have the peppermint hot
Yeah.
chocolate, not just any, the peppermint hot chocolate. That's
Yeah.
awesome. And then the task initiation. So this can be difficult for families, especially when you're transitioning or we've got kids from lots of different ages. I can just picture the getting out of the house. Does everyone have their coats and their mittens and or whatever they need and getting into the van or whatever car and who's sitting where, the actual
Oh my
getting
goodness.
started. Do you have any tips or things that you guys have done to help that?
Yeah, we learned that going in pajamas was best so that when we got home, we could easily get into bed. So that was like the first thing.
Beautiful.
Wear our pajamas. Yeah, and then yeah, checking. My oldest also is a big weather guy, and so he would always check the weather for us if we needed umbrellas or whatever. We don't get snow here, so that was like the main thing if it was raining. And so yeah, I think those things really helped. Trying to remember when they were little, because that's when it was the hardest to get out the
Yeah.
door. I think having pre-planned seats, like where everyone's going to sit, so that they're, because some seats have better viewing than other seats. And so rotating, even making a plan for that so that we aren't arguing as we're trying to enjoy our Christmas lights.
Yes, that's the argument of I can't see out my side and your side. I really think car seats help with that, honestly, because if you're in a car seat, then when you're little, obviously, and that's just where you sit, you're used to it. We had a harder time when our kids were verging like out of the car seat era before driving. And I want to sit on that side. No, I want to sit on that side.
Yes, it's the whole thing. That's, and then
Yes.
we have areas where we walk. So we have
Yeah.
areas we get out and we walk. We talk ahead of time about what the expectation is. I have three very active boys. So when they were little, it was making sure that they were close by, just planning that out ahead of
Mhm.
time
Mhm.
and even practicing a little with one of them in particular.
So good because so our preparation or predictability leads us to be able to have some flexibility of thought, which actually is one of the executive functioning skills within itself. You know what you can prepare for, what you expect to see, or even in your case, what you're saying, like how you expect them to use their bodies in that time, then you're not having to take in so much information, so many, obviously the lights, the sounds, the people, the weather, so much sensory information that's coming in that if they already know or are prepared for that, then it's a little bit easier to be flexible in that moment. How did you, when you're saying that laid out those expectations, how did you do that?
Yeah, connected families, we use a four-part framework. And when I was talking to my kids, it was really important to me that it was still enjoyable. Like, I want the season to still be fun. And I have one kiddo that is just a little bit more impulsive. And
Mhm.
so he would see something and he might go run over and want to investigate it a little bit more. And we talk a lot about that foundation piece that you're safe with me. So first I had to check what was going on in me and my own expectations. Are these expectations like appropriate for my kids? Is this activity at this time of night? Where do I have to measure my expectation? Because it's a little bit later in the day.
Yeah.
There's a lot of excitement. I've just sugared them up with some hot.
Tablet.
So we talk a lot about what's going on in me, what's going on in my kiddo, knowing that I have one that is a little bit more spontaneous, a little bit more apt to run. I just had to check all those things first. And then I could enter into what we call the coaching part of the framework. If I just went in with coaching, then I think it would have taken the fun out of
Yeah.
the event because it would have felt more like criticism than, hey, buddy,
Mhm.
here's what we're going to be doing tonight. This is what it's going to look like. It's going to be so fun and so exciting. And what did we talk about are best ways for you to stay safe? Because there are cars and there's
Yeah.
people that have spent money on their decorations and they don't necessarily want people touching them. And so I would just ask questions, another connected families tool. What does it look like when we're walking down the street? And what did we talk about last year? Do you remember how things went last year? And just remembering how things went and then practicing ahead of time before we went was super helpful, whether that's like holding my hand or how far ahead can you be if you're ahead of me, and those kinds of expectations, just talking about them.
I love this so much because what you're mentioning here is response inhibition, which again, there are lots of terms for that. Impulsivity is another one, but specifically, that is an executive functioning skill. And so when you're giving that preparation in advance, you're encouraging not only that flexibility of thought, but then also that response inhibition, and you're explaining the why. So it's not just me telling you, especially that can take away a lot of the fun. What you're saying that puts more demands and less fun on our children. But when you're saying that why of we need you to be safe, there are people that don't want you to touch their things. What can we do in advance to help to prepare you for that time? And you've thought through all of that. And that can also help with emotional control. And feel free to say as much as you feel comfortable with in this time, but did it always go according to plan?
No,
No.
no, it didn't. So that is where, so the fourth part of the Connected Families framework is the correction piece. And so when we had practiced, when I had prepared ahead of time and things still didn't go as planned, then I would step aside with him, get down on his level. You talk about slow, low, and listen, empathize with him. Man, I know this is so exciting. There's all these lights. It's super fun. You just saw your favorite Star Wars character all lit up. I totally get why you would want to
Because
rush
again,
over
that's
there.
so Christmassy.
I know. We have one house
R2D2
that's
in
like,
green.
yes, we have a whole area that's like all Disney themed. And so it's super fun. I would just talk to him about what did we talk about if you were not able to stay with us as a group? Then, so we call it an if then, we might have to go back in the car and just drive through and not be able to walk. Let's have a do-over. Let's try again and see if we can, another connected families tool, and then let him try again. And maybe he was holding my hand this time, and maybe I would go with him to look at the thing he wanted to look at. So it's just a lot of practice, and it didn't always go well. Sometimes we got back in the car and we would have to drive through instead of walk, but we always tried to do it with like that. I know that it was so fun and so exciting. I know next time that you'll be able to
Yes.
do it. This time we're just going to drive through.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
it's not, I don't want to take the Christmas spirit out of the event. Also, just the connected families way of correcting our kids. We follow through, but we're not punitive about it. And so I think that for him, it was definitely helped because that emotional regulation was something that we struggled with too. So I think if I had entered in with, oh, that's it, getting in the car,
we're out of here. I'm turning this car around, right?
then it just would have been like an emotional meltdown.
Yeah.
And so all of those things helped.
Beautiful. So this episode is brought to you by CTC Math, the program that we have used for years in our homeschool. Now, I love this program all year round, but especially during the holiday season where our rhythm and routine are more flexible. CTC Math is a flexible online math curriculum that adapts to your family's unique schedule. Whether you need to adjust for a busy week, accommodate for different learning paces, or just want the freedom to work around life's surprises. So CTC Math not only provides structured lessons, but also offers built-in evaluations, giving you as a parent a clear, real-time view of how your child is progressing. With these insights, you can support your child exactly where they need it most, helping them master each topic before moving on. And I love that I can check out a PDF of what will be covered in each lesson, so I can chat with my kids about the real application of math during our holiday activities. So for example, since I just checked in on the PDF of the math that my 8th grader is doing, we had a conversation about rational versus irrational numbers, and then applied those same labels, definitions, to rational versus irrational song lyrics for the holiday music that we have playing around the clock. So random, yet effective, because though we decided I'm not the best math teacher for them, and I balance my time differently than sitting next to them for all of their lessons, I do want to support their learning in our everyday activities. And CTC Math makes that possible for me. So you should try CTC Math today and experience the freedom and clarity that it begins and brings to your homeschool. Marnie, now we've talked through one of your favorite activities, which I love. I hope it gave everybody a great example, but also some ideas of what to do. We're all going to be out looking at Christmas lights this year. But let's think about, so sure, it's fantastic that we are building these skills during our natural activities. I hope we showed that. But also, we need to think about if some of these areas are hard, how can we do this and build it into our day-to-day life, or specifically into our homeschool day? Because this isn't just a one time of year thing. Executive functioning skills we are building continuously, round the clock, all the time. So when something is hard, oftentimes I think about, all right, so let's observe if this was hard just in this task, like the planning to go out to look at lights. Was it hard just for that because it's something that's new and different? Or is planning difficult, hard all the time? Now, when I'm observing, I often will say to my kids things like, oh, I noticed that this was difficult when you, whatever. Do you have any tips or keys to help parents when they are observing their kids?
You're trying to think. I think I love that. I notice. I think it's also asking questions about what was hard about that. Like when you get home, kind of debrief, right? Well, what was hard about that? And also, when have we had success with that before? And building off of that, getting their input into it. So if it was like the planning part, I know for sure for us, procrastination is a huge issue. And that shows up in lots of areas, especially now with high school, all the work that needs to be turned in. We go to a co-op weekly, and so it's actually tomorrow. And so today is usually the day that everyone's scrambling, trying to get everything ready for that. And in fact, my middle son has really worked hard on procrastination. He knows that's something that is hard for him. And it's not uncommon for him to stay up late on a day before co-op to get his things done. And he was really intentional this week. And he just came down and handed me his work so that I could check it. And that usually doesn't happen until much later.
Celebrate that, I sure hope.
Oh my gosh, yeah, big hug, big high five. And he was just like all smiles. He's, man, I feel so good. Like I'm not all stressed out.
Yeah.
Able to get it done. And we talked about it. It's been something that he's been working on, and we've made plans for, okay, what could it look like? What would it look like for you not to be stressed out? How would you have to plan backwards in order to have success?
So again, even in that, you're talking through two executive functioning skills. The first one is metacognition. So that's really that self-evaluation or the thinking about thinking. And you are doing that beautifully in that situation with what have you done well and what didn't go well and what would it look like? I really like that question that you said. What would it look like if you did not feel stressed out here? And you're also thinking about time management with that reverse planning. So really breaking it down into, all right, so maybe I would need to have this done by whatever Tuesday. I'm just throwing it out there, but thinking about how long do you actually think something will take, and does it take that long? So there's something frequently that happens in our house too. And my guess would be many other households, especially when we say things like, it'll be time to go in just a minute. And about 30 minutes later, we're rolling through, right? Where kids don't necessarily understand time, and partially because of us as parents mislabeling it, right? So the feeling of how long is something going to take, and then in actuality, using that time. When you guys were thinking through or getting ready for your car ride, right? Do you set aside like how long it's going to take, or was that something that your kids expected or didn't care about?
Yeah, getting out the door was always tricky for sure, especially with trying to gather the things that we needed to. So we talk a lot, and we're not always successful at this, but we talk a lot about planning ahead. And my son was on a cross country team, and their team was called the Hawks. And so, in order to be at the race on time, because they were early morning races, and sometimes we'd have to drive, we would talk about his flat hawk. That's what his coach would call it. Lay out your flat hawk before you go to bed. So he would lay out his uniform like a person right
Yeah.
next to his bed. And so just like we talk about, how can we plan the night before, the day
Yeah.
before, for the activity, right? Me making sure that I had all the ingredients for the hot chocolate and then I got it started ahead of time, right? And that's where my oldest son would help me remember to do those things and what was important. And then making sure for me that the pajamas, the Christmas pajamas were ready to go, right? And so just making sure that we left enough time. I think that is the thing that's hard is I always need to start earlier than I think I do.
Yep. Yep.
Give myself more
I
time.
completely agree. And that carries over into everything, cooking dinner, planning out your day, how long folding laundry is going to take. And this is, guys, when we're talking about how everyday life helps to build executive functioning skills, everyday life requires executive functioning skills as well. So after we observe and are seeing how does this lay out across or play out across other activities or occupations, one of the other things I often talk about is we need to be able to have communication about that specific thing and providing a language. My kids, they'll be like, oh, I have really good metacognition. I recognize that everyone's going to do that. I have another kiddo who he's 9 and he talks about his amygdala in his brain. So I recognize that is not the norm. That is when your mom is an OT and talks about brains all the time. But was was there specific language around executive functioning or around these getting started and persevering and the emotional control, impulsivity, all these things that you've mentioned that you used with your kids?
Gosh, I'm trying to remember. It's been so long. Definitely, like I had to give me 5 that I would, like as we're getting ready to go somewhere. I'm a big fan of like checklists. And so I have a whiteboard that I put on the kitchen counter. I find that if it's like a checklist that just stays in the same place all the time, it becomes wallpaper.
Yep, we lose it.
So for me, I take a whiteboard and I bring it out and I put it on the counter. And that's like a signal to my kids. Okay, here's the things that we need. And so I really like to make a list there, and I'll oftentimes divide it into 3 columns, for one for each boy. And they know what they have to grab, what they have to get, what they have to do. And so that has been really powerful for us. We need that visual reminder.
Yeah.
And the cue, even just the easel coming out on the counter was like, okay, here we go,
Yeah.
get ready.
And hopefully a signal to something fun is going to happen too. Not always now I have to vacuum. But yeah, I think that's great that you can use it for both. That sometimes we have to do things we don't necessarily want to, but sometimes this is really fun and we get to put it all together.
Yeah, and for a while we used a playlist, and that was really effective to mobilize to get out the door. So they knew it was like a playlist that we had with 5 songs on it. So they knew where they needed to be for each song, which was the song that was actually like we're leaving out the
Yeah.
door.
Yeah.
So it was
That's
helpful
really
for
helpful for time management too. And we could carry that over into the holiday season and just using holiday music or this is the same amount of time. How many songs can you fit in there? And then have it be the playlist that you're getting ready to go. You said your son was great at making playlists. So that'd
Yes,
be
yeah,
awesome.
for sure.
Oh, great. Marnie, I think this has been really helpful. Hopefully there are some tips, some tricks and then just also some ideas of fun things to do during this time. Can you tell everyone where to find you and a little bit more about what Connected Families does in itself?
Yeah, I have a website, marnielove.com, and I'm also on Instagram, although I'm not there a ton. But yeah, you can find all of that on my website. Connected Families is actually it's a Christian ministry, and they bring together brain science so Jim and Lynn Jackson are the founders, and Lynn Jackson is an occupational therapist, and so they bring in her brain
Love
science,
OTs.
and then I know she's amazing. So it's a lot of brain science, but then Jim also worked with kids from hard places. And so there's some trauma-informed parenting in there and child development principles. And then they bring that together just with the gospel and how we can disciple our kids in a way that gives them the confidence and the wisdom and responsibility that they need as they grow into successful adults. And so it's really just planting seeds. A lot of it is working on ourselves. That's where we start with that foundation of what's going on in me. And I think that's where even the executive function stuff that I worked on with you was
Yeah.
that played a lot into my own foundation work. Okay, what am I doing as a parent that's hard for my kids, that
Yeah.
rushing them out the door, like those kinds of things. And some of that was my own executive function delays.
Yeah.
And so I just love that part of it, of just like really coming alongside our kids and helping them. So I feel like what you do and what I do with Connected Families, I know I've sent a lot of families to you because we work a
And
lot
vice
with kids.
versa.
We work a lot with kids that are neurodivergent. They're really drawn to Connected Families because of that OT piece. And so I just love when I compare a family that I'm working with, helping them with their parenting to also get the help they need with occupational therapy from you. So it's been really wonderful.
That is so great. And thank you so much. And again, marnielove.com. So it's MARNI love.com. And we will make sure that is all linked in the show notes. And also some pieces that we've talked about before, the co-regulation, because that is so much of what you're speaking about here. And then other posts for executive functioning. Because guys, this is, again, not just a holiday thing, but an ongoing thing. But thank you so much for being here and for joining us today. We hope that you have a fantastic holiday season.
Thanks, Sarah.